The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to College Football Coast to Coast. I am your host, Jacob, along with my co-host, Tyler. It is a middle of the week night. It's a little bit of a weird one here, but we decided to give you guys a little bit of an extra show in here, and it's one that you and I, Tyler, have been waiting on for quite a while, and that is the New Year's Six preview. So we will get to the New Year's Six preview in the second segment of the show tonight. First, Tyler, we got some games to recap. Not too many, but there is a good portion of them, as there's been some games rattled off in the last couple of days, three a day type thing. So we got some games to recap first. So jumping into our recap, we'll start with the Georgia Southern and Buffalo game. This game very intriguing, very interesting. From my perspective, Tyler, I thought that this game would be very one-sided early on. Buffalo gets out to a decent lead. They're holding their own. They're moving the ball well. Running game was fantastic for them. You might have to check me, but I'm pretty sure that their running back was averaging over 5 yards a carry. Really throughout the entire game. Didn't have any problems moving the football. Problem was Georgia Southern took advantage of missed opportunities, I think, from Buffalo. Buffalo had multiple chances, I think, to score in this game, and they just didn't. It was just one of those things where I thought Buffalo could win this game by 2 touchdowns, and they turn out Buffalo only wins by 2 points, but a win's a win, especially in bowl season.
Yeah, this is two evenly matched teams. Both of these, opponents were both 6-6. Georgia Southern, really the main win that we were hitting on was that Nebraska early win. Like, how good of a win was that at the time? Well, now we know that it wasn't really a good win, but still, I thought that this was going to be a much higher scoring game. I've seen both of these teams on the field. Buffalo has put up 40 points in a game. Georgia Southern with Clay Helton, the former USC head coach, he's now there building a good program. But like you mentioned, like we said in the last show that we had on Tuesday, was that teams, if they turn the ball over, they're not going to win too many ball games, and that's what happened here. The running games for both sides were able to get it going. That's really was the main score. One, like you mentioned, Buffalo was able to get out to a good enough early lead to build on that, and then their defense was able to really settle in against Georgia Southern. So I think that Buffalo, in the end, not the season that they were hoping for in the MAC, a 7-6 season. They still have a lot of talent returning back. So I know that I was very high on the MAC of some teams, Michigan and Toledo, but Buffalo is going to be a team that I'm going to be interested in watching next season because they have the offense in place, and it's looking like the defense is slowly getting to that point. But Georgia Southern, like I mentioned, with the Sun Belt, that's been a team that's been consistent. That 1 year where they had 10 wins, they went to the same bowl game, the Camellia Bowl. They won on a late field goal. Here they get up short. So good win for Buffalo to end their season, though.
Definitely a good one for Buffalo. I I think getting into our next game here, I think it was kind of what I thought this game would be like. But moving on to our next one here, the Memphis Tigers and the Utah State. I don't even remember their mascot.
The Aggies.
The Aggies. That's right. Yes.
It's
yes,
weird
the
because
Aggies.
their mascot is a bull, but they're called the
Yes.
Aggies.
It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And meanwhile, Texas A&M is also the Aggies, but that's actually an Aggies. I doesn't make any sense. But neither here nor there. This game here, I thought would play out like this. I felt that this was kind of a setup game. This was played at SMU, which is a American school. Folks, if you don't know, Memphis is also an American school that has played there this year, so kind of some familiarity with the stadium and the scenery. For Utah State, a little bit of travel in there. Both of these teams actually had to travel pretty well equal distance for this one. So I think it's a good venue for it. I like SMU. I think it's a neat place. I like their campus. I like their football facilities and everything. For as far as the game goes, I felt that it really came out, and it wasn't how I thought it was gonna score wise. It did, but the way it did, I didn't think it would. Memphis's defense played a heck of a game. That's the best defensive game I've seen Memphis play in a very long time. Basically shut down Utah State on offense. I mean, really, only 2 scoring drives this entire game. Utah State, I can't even count how many punts were in this game, but there was a lot. Punters had a lot going on the Utah State side. Memphis took advantage of opportunities on offense, throwing the ball. Great game passing the ball for their quarterback. Unbelievable game for him. It was a good showing for this Memphis team. Best of the year, I think. They did save the best for last. I mean, it really was a 38-10. I just felt overall this one, Utah State was just overmatched. I think, Utah State isn't a very big school. Memphis is a decently sized school to be in the group of 5, and they pretty much held their own against, a team that just doesn't play anybody at that caliber in order to compete. I mean, heck, Utah State I think played Alabama in the second week of the season this year,
Yeah.
and there was just no chance. I mean, that's kind of what it is in this one here. Not saying that Memphis and Alabama are on the same level because they're not, but just totally overmatched in this one. Great win for Memphis, 38-10 final.
Yeah, this was a complete overmatch. I mean, Seth Hannigan had his way in the passing game, and then the running game, Ducker had 2 touchdowns. So 5 total between those two guys. It's going to be hard to beat Memphis. So like you mentioned, the defense really stepped up in this one. I agree with you. I haven't seen this Memphis defense step like this whole entire season. So it's good to get out on a high note. Utah State side, only the lone touchdown. Their defense really struggled to stop both sides of the ball, both in the running game and the passing game. But Utah State, I know that they went 6-6, but I'm going to say this a lot with these teams. It's very disappointing. Like, they've had the losses where I was just scratching the head. Like, what is going on with this Utah State team? Like the UConn game after, I think it was either before or after the Alabama game, where UConn came into their place and just blew the doors off them. And we were just wondering, well, is this Utah State team even going to make a bowl game? They ended up getting some quality wins on the Mountain West schedule. But for Memphis' side, I mean, now that you have UCF and Cincinnati leaving the Big 12, I know that's going to be a big talk in the offseason here on the show. The top 2 teams should be next year is Tulane and Memphis. And I think that both of those teams, looking at them, this is going to be a phenomenal rivalry in the next coming years between the 2 teams.
Yeah, I think it'll be 2 teams that'll both be offensive juggernauts. They're in the American. Both teams know how to score the ball, no problemo. So I think it'll be very interesting to see how the American shapes out here in the future with those teams leaving, as you mentioned. Moving on to our next one here, Battle of the Carolinas, Coastal Carolina and East Carolina going at it here. Very interesting. Tyler, you saw something I didn't see. I mean, it's just one of those games where Coastal just wasn't able to stop East Carolina. It was just fun, just odd. And I was like, what is going on? That is the worst defensive performance I've seen from a football team, period, the end, at any point in time this season. I think that was terrible defensively. Offensively, 29 points, Okay, I get it. You can compete with that amount of points. But giving up 53 to an East Carolina team that didn't play that well this year, uh, I just felt was beyond me. And I was really scratching my head. Don't get me wrong, East Carolina, they won some decent games this year. I mean, and they kept it close with some teams that they had a chance to beat. Uh, but giving up 53 points is a lot. I mean, I don't think anybody saw this game going to 81 or 82 points total. I don't think anybody did, but that's very interesting to see. I mean, Coastal definitely ended their season on a negative note, which I know that you and I will probably be talking about in the offseason. We'll be breaking down kind of each conference throughout the offseason, I think, what's going on. And I think Coastal will be a very big topic when we get to the Sun Belt, and reevaluating what they have in the offseason and how they move forward.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I was doing backflips watching this game with my East Carolina pick. It was looking good as it was going on. I mean, man, what a game by Allers! 5 total touchdowns, and we did see Grayson McCall get a touchdown. This is going to be a last game with Coach. I just saw it with this Coastal Carolina team. Like in the first half of the season, they were phenomenal. They were really undefeated. They were cruising. They could have been ranked. They were ranked in the AP poll, but didn't get any consideration in the college football playoff poll rankings. But really in the second half, their defense just fell apart. Their offensive identity with Grayson McCall with his injury, it was just a really completely different team. I saw it in the Sun Belt Championship game, which they shouldn't have went to. I've been this up multiple times. I don't have to bring up anymore, but they just didn't look good against Troy. They gave up 41 points to a Troy offense, that's been good at times, but for the most part, that's a team that relies on the defensive side of the ball. But going into this game, I didn't think that East Carolina was going to put up 53. This is a team that has been on the defensive-minded side. They do have the offense at times. Looking back at that NC State game, they were able to compete in that. And they have some games, UCF, where they can put up some points on you. They put up 30-plus points on UCF for the team that we'll be talking about in the next couple of minutes. Well, this is a great win for East Carolina. I think that East Carolina is slowly building up. East Carolina has been a dumpster fire in the American Conference. They had a couple of good years with the quarterback that I cannot mention. He was so good back in the day. But, man, East Carolina, you just feel with this program getting 8 wins this season after a couple of down years, this is going to be a program in the American that, like I mentioned, with the teams move out the door, there's going to be teams like East Carolina, like a Navy that has the potential to go up. So I think that East Carolina is definitely in the right direction.
Definitely trending in the right direction. Excellent team. Looking to see what they do in the future here next season with some teams on the move, like we mentioned with our last one. Moving on to our next game here. Now to the Power 5 in this one here. Wisconsin and Oklahoma State. Wisconsin wins this one 24-17. Oklahoma State cannot complete the comeback after being down 24-3 pretty late into this game in the third quarter. Biggest thing in this one, of course, Luke Fickell is on the sideline for Wisconsin in this game. I didn't think that was going to be the case. I was kind of surprised to see him out there, to be honest with you. I thought he would want a fresh start to a new season to evaluate things. But no, he stepped right in and was right there for the bowl game with the headset on and ready to go, which says a lot about his commitment to coming to Wisconsin to better that Badger offense and defense. They do definitely need help, and this is a trend in the right direction. As far as Oklahoma State goes, there is some pieces that we're missing, aka quarterback Spencer Sanders, of course, transfers out, no longer available for them. They go with a backup. And at running back, same story. I think they're missing a lot of skill guys. And he had a lot of guys with not much experience step in and take over in a role that they're normally not there for in that portion of the game, I guess. But Oklahoma State almost completes the comeback here. They just fall short of it. Got down too early. Wisconsin, this is the offense that we used to see Wisconsin dish out 24 points, 31 points. And the story of this in the second half, Wisconsin turned the ball over numerous times in the second half and let Oklahoma State back into this football game. And I thought the momentum was on their side all the way through. And I said, man, Oklahoma State might come back in this game. Because, I mean, Wisconsin didn't score after half. I mean, that's really the story of it. And, if you're going to shut down a team in the second half and play good defense, your chances of coming out in the second half and winning that football game were still right there in the grasp of your hand. I mean, I know you were missing people, but you got guys that can step up. Their backup quarterback actually didn't play that bad of a game. Played a decent game, an unbelievable play up near the end zone to get them only down by 7 with a little shovel pass while falling down there on 4th and goal. Gave Oklahoma State that touchdown to get back into it. Your thoughts from this game, Tyler? First, with the venue, and secondly, what made Wisconsin, uh, be able to move the ball so well and be able to hold a decent Oklahoma State team to only 17 points and a team we normally see average in the 40s?
Well, first on the venue, of course, we had that spiel of should bowl games be in baseball stadiums. I said that it should just be at the historical venues. This one being at Chase Field, home of the Arizona Diamondbacks. I think it was a fine venue. You have the pool in the background. They had a nice crowd. It was a nice, it wasn't really much of a game in the first 3 quarters. Like you mentioned, Wisconsin really dominated this one. They were up 24-7, and Oklahoma State was able to come back. Like you mentioned, the backup quarterback did a fine job, especially with Spencer Sanders opting out and ended up transferring. He has put his name in the transfer portal, but the destination is still to be named. And then Graham Mertz, who's going to be transferring to Florida, was out in this one. But man, Braylon Allen had a good game as well, over 100 yards rushing and a touchdown as well. So I think that he's been the MVP for this offense. Really, Graham Mertz wasn't the answer for this Wisconsin team. They're going to be bringing in a really highly recruited. Either he's a 4-star or 5-star, I believe. I think that Luke Fickell, like you mentioned, he was coaching on the sidelines. I just think that that's just his character, and that's going to be his attitude about this Wisconsin football team. So I'm looking for this Wisconsin team next year. I know that it's going to be a quick rebuild. I think that, the way that the Big Ten West is set up right now, it's as open as it's going to be. So I think that Wisconsin, even with a new head coach, could get up to that. But, man, Oklahoma State, just a disappointing year. Like I mentioned, they were highly ranked. They were bringing everybody back. I know that they lost Jim Knowles, but their defense really wasn't the problem. It was the offense. Like Spencer Sanders at times whenever he looked 100%, he looked good. And then whenever he wasn't 100%, he just couldn't make the throws that were needed. So just really disappointing season overall from Oklahoma State, especially them making an appearance in the Big 12 championship, to really thinking, that the way that Oklahoma was built this year, the way that Texas was built, and we're seeing TCU come out all of nowhere. But yeah, disappointing season for Oklahoma State, especially if you're a Cowboys fan. But man, Wisconsin, what a win this was. I know that the score was close, but this just felt like Wisconsin all the way through.
Yeah, it did for a large majority of that game. Look to see what's coming from that Wisconsin team. A lot of hype around that in the near future. Moving on to UCF and Duke here in the Military Bowl. It is the Military Bowl. I figured it out, Tyler. I figured out why it's called the Military Bowl, because it's played in Annapolis, which of course is Navy's home football stadium. So that is why it is called
Makes
the
more
Military
sense.
Bowl, which it makes a little bit of sense, but still, I think there should be some sort of team playing in it that is tied to our armed forces. But anyways, moving on to the two teams here. This game was sideways, upside down, and backwards the whole way through. UCF had trouble moving the football this entire game. Let me tell you what, the stars of the game is Duke's offensive line, I think, is the story of this game. They were able to run the ball at will against these Knights. It just felt that they controlled every aspect of this game, offense, defense, absolutely just going after the ball. They played a fantastic game for Duke. I think they really are coming up into the ACC and being able to be a contender. I think that they're right there. It might take a little bit more, maybe a little longer. I mean, I don't think they're at the point right now where they're going to knock off a Clemson, but I do think they are at the point where they can compete with teams like NC State, North Carolina, Pitt. I mean, there are opportunities there within the conference for them to compete, and they showed up well in this one. They do win 30-13 over UCF. As far as UCF goes, Tyler, for you, what did UCF not only lack in this game but throughout the season? I felt like we kept revisiting UCF, and now that we're done with the season, what was that thing about them that just they weren't able to execute?
They weren't able to execute it on the defense at games. Like I mentioned, they've gotten exposed multiple times. We've seen it against that East Carolina game where they lost 30-14 here, where they lost 30-13. And then the Tulane game, they were able to win the first matchup in New Orleans, but they weren't able to win the second one. Tulane was able to really dominate that one. And the story of the season has been on the show is that UCF, they can show up one Saturday and beat you. I mean, let's just not forget they put up 77 on a team, and then now they come here and when another weekend they can put up only 13 on you. So it doesn't know what UCF you're going to get. But I just feel like their defense, and I just think that John Ross Plumlee, he's just too inconsistent of a quarterback for me. He's not the Dylan Gabriel Gabriel that we're seeing it tonight. What he's doing against a really good Florida State defense in the Campbell World Stadium of the Cheez-It Bowl. So on the other side, I mean, Duke getting 9 wins, what a season it was. I mean, not long ago, you fired your longtime head coach that brought success. You bring in the new head coach, had an okay season last year. Now you putting up 9 wins. I mean, that's the turnaround that you're looking for at Duke. So I think Duke, the way that you were talking about, their running game was able to really run at will, and especially Riley Leonard, the quarterback, he had 2 of his touchdowns on the ground, but like I mentioned, Ron Plumlee just didn't have it. The lone touchdown came from Bowser, and they missed an extra point. Like, you just can't do that in a bowl game if you'd win that. So they just didn't have really any answers for this Duke running game. But really good win for Duke. But, man, Gus Malzahn and this UCF coaching staff has a lot of question marks because I know that they won 9 games, but still this could have been the program in the year to win that American Conference Championship.
Yeah, I think for me, talking about UCF, I think watching this game, I figured it out. As far as UCF goes, I revisit, and a lot of things go back to, I take a lot of things back to coaching, and I take a lot of things back to the coaching staff, because at the end of the day, those players are only as good as they're coached. They're not calling the shots out there on the field. They're getting plays from the sideline that their coordinators see, their head coach see, or whoever it is in film, and that's what they prepare for, and that's how they match up against the defense. My thing was, it's kind of the history of Gus Malzahn, and I think it goes back to Auburn. I think his offense, as far as offense goes, he's too technical with the offense. I'm not saying to make it vanilla, I think that's one thing that you hate, when watching football is vanilla offense. I'm not saying to make it vanilla offense, but you can't make it too technical on your quarterback. He either throws a check down route, he sees an open guy and he rips the ball, or you decide, hey, look, I'm going to hand off to running back, block, get out of the way, do whatever. I said, but you can't run an NFL style offense at an American school and expect success every single time because it's not going to happen. Teams figure that out. I mean, if you run the same thing over and over again and it's too technical for your team to figure out, understand, don't get me wrong, Plumlee's a decent quarterback and he's got a future if he can keep it up and he can keep producing well. But my problem is with the coaching staff. If Gus wants to take that team to the next level with double-digit wins and get them where they really should be in the American and competing really well, they gotta make it a little more simple. I mean, they just gotta tone it back just a little bit because it just looks like there's too much going on the field at one time for them on offense. Defensively, they're a decent team. Duke just played better, I think. But of course, that was kind of the snoozer of that. We're getting to the exciting one next. The most exciting game of bowl season so far is this game right here. Kansas, the Jayhawks, and the Arkansas Razorbacks. Let me tell you what, folks, the final 55-53 in triple overtime. Arkansas holds on in this one as Kansas cannot convert on the 2-point conversion with their backup quarterback. As Tyler likes to allude to, Mr. Bean could not convert. Not sure where he was throwing the football to some pretty girl in the third row, but it was not to his receiver in the end zone because his tight end was wide open when I went back and looked at that. So, yeah, that was a bit of a miscue there for them. And, of course, it cost them a bowl game. But, look, this game here, fantastic. Tyler, what's the story of this game? Because this final score was not what it was to begin this game or halfway through this game.
No, it was not at all. It was really the tail. I mean, Arkansas got out to a 31-7 victory. I was like, oh, this Arkansas came out of nowhere and then Kansas is going to lay down. But nope. Here comes Jalen Daniels. I know that we had like an early Heisman talk about him, the hype, but he had 5 touchdowns in this one. I mean, this was just an insane game. This is going to be the best bowl game it's going to top. I don't know if the New Year's Six bowl game is going to top it. I don't know if the national championship is going to top it, but over 100 points in this game. I mean, I know that both defenses are, were, inconsistent throughout the season, but I just didn't think that it was going to be this bad. But yeah, this was just a tale of two halves here. Arkansas got out to that big lead. And then Kansas, like we've seen all season, they just have that adversity. I feel like every Big 12 team has that. It's just like the TCU syndrome. They get down big and they come out of nowhere and fight through. But overtime was even crazier. I mean, they had that targeting penalty that kept the game going. Arkansas got that stop at the goal line, and it gave Kansas another hope. But like you mentioned, in the third overtime, if you haven't watched college football this season, and they have a new rule in place, that means that the third overtime is pretty much a 2-point off. So KJ Jefferson was able to run it in from the 2-yard line in Kansas. Like you mentioned, Mr. Bean wasn't able to get it in. So it was just a crazy, wild game. And this is going to be a game I think that everybody will remember from this season. So good win for Arkansas. But still, if you're a Kansas fan, this is really, I mean, going from like they were undefeated at one point. They were ranked. They were highly ranked. I know that they finished 6-7. Probably not the season they wanted to, but still, if you're a Kansas fan, you made it to a bowl game and you pretty much played, the best that you could against this Arkansas team. Now you could have played better in the first half, and if you did, you probably win this game. But still, man, what a game this was!
Absolutely fantastic game there. With two teams that have no problem scoring the ball. Getting on to our next one here, a very close game here. The number ranked 15 Oregon Ducks had a stalemate of a game here with the North Carolina Tar Heels. Interesting game here. I did not see this game being this close. Oregon does hold on for a 28-27 win over the Tar Heels. Tyler, I didn't spend too much time watching this game. My biggest thing here was Oregon only having 28 points seemed kind of low to me, as well as they were able to score the football all year long. For you, I mean, what kept North Carolina in this game? And Oregon ultimately finishes the season out very well with Bo Nix at quarterback. But what's the reasoning behind like North Carolina staying in this football game when a lot of people had this as a blowout?
This is the craziest thing I'm about to say to you. Their defense kept them in the game. I mean, at the start of the season, it'd be like, what? No. Like, literally, the first game that they had, they gave up 60-plus points to Appalachian State. And throughout the whole entire season, it hasn't been really since that NC State game, this North Carolina defense. So looking like Gene Chizik has done a good job with this defensive play. And Drake May was able to make some quality throws. He had 3 touchdowns on the game. I feel like every bowl game this happens. North Carolina got out to a lead. They were up 24-14 at one point going into the fourth quarter. And then here comes Bucky Irvin in the running back. This feels like Yankee Irving. If you don't know if you watched that movie before, that's what his name reminds me of. He had 149 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then Bo Nix made that quality throw once again, like he always does, with 19 seconds left to win the game, 28-27 to stun North Carolina. I mean, like I mentioned, for so many games. North Carolina really controlled this game all the way into the fourth quarter. And then here comes Bo Nix. He's had a phenomenal year with Oregon. He's going to be coming back next year. So I expected this one to be more of a blowout, but North Carolina really proved us all wrong. They really came to play in this one. And the way that Drake May has been playing, if you can play like this for 12 games, watch out for North Carolina next season. Mr. ACC, you might be going with the Tar Heels. So once again,
Maybe they might be included. We'll have to see in our season preview for next year when we reevaluate the offseason for North Carolina and the return of Bo Nix to Oregon. We'll have to see what happens with them in the Pac-12 because there's a lot of changes to come in that conference. Moving on to our next game here, a clash in the Texas Bowl in Houston at NRG Stadium between the Texas Tech Red Raiders and the Ole Miss Rebels. I ultimately called it, Tyler. I felt that this game here was going to be a game that Ole Miss could not handle because of the offensive firepower of Texas Tech. The main thing I didn't see in this one was Texas Tech's defense stepping up and holding Ole Miss to 25 points. Ole Miss gets a touchdown at garbage time. So they didn't convert the 2-point conversion. So ultimately, this was really a 42-19 type game. Craziest thing was it was actually more of a 35-19 type game until Ole Miss scores the 6 points and doesn't convert, and then 2 back-to-back drives, Ole Miss decides to kick onside kicks. Well, the first onside kick went out of bounds. Great job, by the way. That kicker should be without a job after that one. And then to make matters even worse, the hands teams were out for both. Texas Tech, one of their front hands team guys just picks the ball up and just runs for a touchdown without being even touched. Nobody breathed on him. Nothing happened. And he just walked into the end zone. And one of the your analyst on there says, he said, that'll be the easiest touchdown he'll ever score in his career. And you might be right, because that was the biggest joke. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, I said, this is an SEC team that arguably was in the driver's seat after, LSU and Alabama beat up on each other. Ole Miss is in the driver's seat at this point and still has a chance, at making the SEC championship. There were 3 teams there that really all had an opportunity to do it. And Ole Miss basically choked the rest of their season away, losing multiple games towards the end of the year that basically gave them no upside. And I was really disappointed in how Lane Kiffin handled this team late in the season. I watched Lane Kiffin complain and whine more times late in the season than any other time. I mean, it was so bad. I'm sitting there doing, dude, coach the team. I'm sitting here thinking, it's late in the game. You're losing by 20 points, 17 points to a Texas Tech team that really hadn't amounted to too much this year. And actually was 7-5 this season and won a couple of decent games. They weren't supposed to win against Texas. And they ultimately come out and they destroy you on offense. On defense, I dare say that Texas Tech had the best defense out of anybody I've seen this bowl season. Linebackers flying around. They were holding an SEC team on a 2nd and 1 and forcing that team to punt on 4th and 1, which was very impressive for them. They have a lot of guys returning for them. I'm very impressed with this Texas Tech Red Raider team. I think they are my dark horse for next season for the Big 12. Definitely coached well. Their coach is seasoned with them for the last couple of years. It's only his 2nd season coaching Texas Tech, or believe it or not. And they have a lot to take with them next season. Very good year for them. Ole Miss back to the drawing board again. They got to figure it out. I mean, a lot of people thought that they had the pieces necessary for them to make an SEC championship run, and they fell way short of that.
Yeah, like you, I was very impressed with this Texas Tech team. I mean, when it comes to bowl season, Texas Tech is going to show up, and they did. They went 2-0 in back-to-back seasons. against the state of Mississippi last year. They really cruised to a victory against Mississippi State. This year they cruised. I mean, we love to talk about the offense. I mean, Tyler Show controlled it on through the air and he was the leading rusher for Texas Tech. He had over 100 yards rushing and a couple of touchdowns. And on the other side, Jackson Dart, just a rough game for him. 3 interceptions, just too many turnovers. I mean, Texas Tech's defense, believe it or not, was a better defense in this show. I mean, Ole Miss, like you mentioned, they got out to, they were 7-0 at one point. They're in the top 10. And then after that LSU game, they just completely fell apart. They had that losing streak. They lost back-to-back games to LSU and Alabama. Like you mentioned, they pretty much were still in control of their destiny. If they beat Alabama, they would just need an LSU loss, and they got that. But instead, LSU ended up winning the SEC West. I mean, Texas Tech, you got to give credit to them. Quinshon Judkins, he had 91 yards. That's a good game. But to hold him under 100 yards, that's definitely a success. And they just capped it off with a 44-yard kickoff return and to get it 42-25. So I'm very impressed with this Texas Tech team. I will say it. I was wrong about this one. I did pick Ole Miss in this one. I just didn't really too much believe in Texas Tech's defense. They really haven't shown me, but boy, they showed me a lot. So like you, I might put him as my dark horse pick next year. I'll have to keep this team in mind as we go on to the offseason.
Yeah, going into the offseason, reflecting on our betting this year, I think I'm going to include Texas Tech in a few of those, after analyzing the season and seeing how well that they played. Moving on to our final game here. This was, of course, the well-anticipated Pinstripe Bowl. I felt that this game here was very interesting, only because Minnesota winning this one with the freshman quarterback felt as if this is kind of their future. I mean, they've really turned a leaf, and this is where they're going to go. And they haven't scored a ton of points this year, and they haven't needed to. I mean, their defense stepped up in key moments and won them a good football game. All they need is their quarterback to not turn the ball over. And I mean, that's all they were asking, and I think they got that in this one. Minnesota does beat the Syracuse Orange 28-20. Disappointment for me is this Syracuse team. Dino Babers did not have this team ready for the second half of the season. You open the year 8-0, and you end up losing basically the rest of your football games. And you just forgot how to play football. Granted, you had a banged up quarterback, but at this stage of the game, you got to figure it out. I mean, they were really a team that was poised to beat Clemson on the road. They couldn't do it. And they ended up after that just kind of falling apart, and we never saw them rise again and win a decent football game. I think they won one game after that, which was pretty sad. I just felt that I just felt that they lost complete control of the offense, only scoring 20 points after they were steamrolling teams this year. So momentum is a real thing in football, folks, and I think momentum and I think the snail caught up with Syracuse, and they just hit the brakes too fast, and that was it. There's no way to come back from that. Once you start trending in a certain direction in this league, I think that you're bound to head that direction unless there is major change and major change fast. And it just didn't come with the Syracuse Orange team. Good win for Minnesota. They do finish the season so. I mean, kind of a wacky year in the Big Ten West. They do finish okay. I know they did fall short of that Big Ten championship by a couple of games because of the wacky circumstances. But decent win for them. Good bowl win in this one.
Yeah, when thinking about Syracuse, I just felt like that Clemson game just took the life out of that team. That was really Syracuse dominated that one. That's a game that they probably should have won, and then they lose that game, and it just feels like they just lost a sense, of their identity. Garrett Schrader had over 300 yards passing in this one, but he had nothing to show for it, just an interception in this one. But on the other side, Minnesota, this is the Minnesota season that they're looking for. Wins, they'll take that in a heartbeat every year. So I think that PJ Fleck, he's just building a consistent program. he's just a consistent winner. We saw what he could do at Western Michigan whenever they got that Cotton Bowl berth. And then, Minnesota is going to be a team that's going to compete in the Big Ten West no matter who they got. Even with a true freshman, he didn't even throw 100 yards passing in this one, and they still won the game 28-20. But this was just another bowl game where we saw a team like Minnesota dominate through 3 quarters, and then Syracuse got a late touchdown by Garrett Schrader. He was able to use his legs. But Mo Ibrahim, I mean, he's going to be one of the best running backs in the next level. So, I mean, he had 71 yards rushing and touchdown as well. He was able to also break a record for Minnesota. So, a very good season for Minnesota. But like you mentioned, Syracuse's ultimate downfall. It's like ironic. We had Ole Miss. We're talking about their downfall going from highly ranked, finishing their season on really a dud. And now Syracuse, like you mentioned, they won 1-2 games down the stretch. So 7-6, not the season, especially, after that. They were undefeated going into that Clemson game. They were 6-0 in that stretch and to only pick up 1 win in those next couple of games. There's going to be a lot of chit chatter. There was already a hot seat talk about Dino Babers. I don't know, 7-6, how many years is that going to buy you at Syracuse?
Not many, considering the history of that program. It is a basketball school, but football definitely ranks high on the priority of them now that the ACC is getting harder and harder every year. So, of course, that is it for our recap for those games. Getting to our preview, and of course, I can't give you the preview without a sponsor. The first one being
Can't do it like last show.
Yes, the Buffalo Bayou Brewing Company is our first sponsor of the show. If you guys want to head to their website over there and check all of their brews out. And of course, if you want to visit over there in Houston and you're in the area, go check out the views from their lovely decks over there, and they'll get you hooked up with whatever you guys want out there. Excellent food, excellent drinks. You guys can check that out here in the new year. Head over to www.buffbrew.com. That is www.buffbrew.com. Tyler, getting to our preview, starting with our first one in the Orange Bowl here, is with Tennessee and Clemson. The biggest story here is your team that has the opt-outs, your team that has a transfer quarterback that transfers out. Clemson's kind of looking at the future of their team and the future of their quarterback situation. This one is going to be I can see it being a close game only because Clemson hasn't played to their full potential all season long. I think Dabo Swinney knows that. On the other side of things, Tennessee been plagued by injuries late in the season. Disappointing blowout loss to South Carolina. That'll hang over their heads for a very long time. It is actually the battle of the two teams that couldn't beat Carolina, South Carolina. So we'll see who wins the battle of the non-winners of North Carolina. I'm going to cast my vote for the team on the right in the orange, which would be the Clemson Tigers. I just have more belief in this Clemson team, and it's not that I have a ton of belief in them. I just have more than I do in Tennessee based on what's happened late in the season. Clemson turned their season around somewhat okay. I do think the committee has kind of sided with them a little bit based on their past performances in previous seasons. Do I think that should be taken into account when looking at a brand new season? No, not at all. But it does happen. So it just seems that Clemson has figured it out in some sense of our imagination. I don't know how. But for Tennessee, disappointing into the season. I know you'll get to the opt-outs and the players that are hurt, moving on, because you are Mr. ACC or Mr. SEC when it comes to that. So yeah, I just think Clemson has more firepower, and I just think they have a young quarterback who's hungry to get this team back on the right path.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of stories on both sides of the ball. More on Tennessee side, like you mentioned, with the opt-out. So we obviously know that Hendon Hooker is out for the year, and they're going to turn to Joe Milton, the former Michigan quarterback. So that they're going to have to rely heavily now on their running game with Jalen Hyatt and Cedric Tillman not playing in this game. So that means that Jalen Wright, their leading rusher, is going to have to get a bulk of the workload. And I think that Tennessee, a lot of people are saying that they're going to be able to move the ball, but I think that Clemson's rush defense has been suspect. A lot of ACC opponents have been able to run the ball. We saw that South Carolina was able to have success on the running game. So I think that Tennessee will still be able to score, but I just feel like Clemson on the offense, they found their identity, especially with DJ Uiagalelei. Going to Oregon State now, and then Cade Klubniak now being their guy. And Klubniak, the way that he's been playing the past couple of weeks, it's hard not to pick against this Clemson team. So I think with that, this offensive identity has changed. I think that Will Shipley in the running game. I mean, Tennessee's defense, everybody wants to say, like, they have a good defense, but honestly, they really don't. They've got exposed multiple times. Georgia was able to take advantage of them. South Carolina was able to take advantage of them, and they're able to take advantage of them in the vertical game. So I think that Clemson's wide receivers are definitely going to be tested against the secondary, but I think that Will Shipley could also be a factor in the receiving game. So I think it's still going to be close. I'm not expecting this to be a blowout. I think that even with Tennessee and the opt-outs on both sides of the ball, I think that their offense will be able to move it. But in the end, I'm going to go with Clemson in the all-orange Orange Bowl. Should be a lot of fun on Friday night.
Should be a great Friday night game there in the Orange Bowl. Moving on to our next one here in New Orleans is the All-State Sugar Bowl between the number 5 ranked Alabama Crimson Tide and the number 9 ranked Kansas State Wildcats. I think biggest thing for me is this is an opportunity for K-State more than anything. Alabama's been here countless times. It is an opportunity for K-State. After going last year to the Texas Bowl, they win the Texas Bowl, but here they are. I mean, basically new team, new season, and they have struck something. They struck gold, basically. In the sense that, they get a big win against TCU, which basically vaults them into this football game. I think if TCU loses that game, they're ultimate. Well, they lost, but thing about it is I think if they lose another game somewhere in there, throughout the season, I figured that they would be in this spot. But the committee ultimately viewed that win, enough for K-State to take that crown there. And of course, they were the Big 12 champion, so they are going to get a nod for a game like this. For them, it's a great opportunity. They beat a great TCU team that was undefeated this year. Alabama basically hasn't played to what Alabama standards are this year, and according to Nick Saban and others within the organization. I think for me, the difference is Alabama struggles with teams that can score the football. If they're going to get in a game where they got to match somebody shot for shot in a football game, Alabama is not that team anymore that can do that. They rely on their defense. If their defense can't handle it and they're going to get beat deep and they can't stop the run, they're going to get exposed in a game like this. Not saying that exposed means they're going to lose by 30, but they're going to lose a football game to a team that's viewed in the football world, especially in the college football world, as inferior to them. K-State is no powerhouse. K-State is no Alabama, but K-State knows how to move the football, and they've got the right pieces in place to do it. I think the first thing that it starts with is the running game, and I think you're probably going to talk about it as well. But if Alabama can't stop Deuce Vaughn in the backfield, they are going to lose this football game. That is the biggest thing. Are you going to have Will Anderson step up and actually play a good football game this year? Todd McShay has him listed as the number 2 NFL draft prospect. I don't think he's played like the number 2 NFL draft prospect, to be honest with you. Is he going to step up? Is Alabama's secondary going to step up and stop guys? Because they've had a whole lot of flags thrown on them this year because all they do is grab guys. That's been their problem this year. I think K-State takes advantage of the opportunity. They throw the football. They're not afraid of a team like Alabama. You just beat an undefeated team that's basically ran the show in all of the Big 12. I don't think they're scared for this football game, and I think ultimately this is a game where you can see an upset. I'm gonna take K-State in this one. I think that they can do it. They've got all the necessary things. Coaching is big in this one. They've got a guy who's ready, fired up for them to win a big football game here. If they beat Alabama, Alabama really needs to figure it out because there will be a lot of head scratching in this offseason if Alabama loses a football game, and I think there will be. I just think that it's time for a new team to step in and step up and win a big football game. And I don't know, Tyler, you probably know this, but when was the last time a Big 12 team won the Sugar Bowl?
I cannot remember, but I know one thing is that Alabama in the Sugar Bowl is like Superman to Kryptonite. They are, I don't can't even remember the last time that Alabama has won the Sugar Bowl like outside of the playoff, because the last time that they were in the Sugar Bowl was against Trevor Knight's Oklahoma Sooners, and Oklahoma was able to handily win that one. You can go back to '08 whenever Utah beat them. The last Sugar Bowl win in the playoff was against Clemson. It was a 1v4 matchup, and Clemson was the home team in that one. But really, the question marks going in this game was how, who's going to play on Alabama's side. We know that Bryce Young is going to be a top draft pick, probably going to go to the Houston Texans. Like you mentioned, Will Anderson is going to be a top 5 draft pick as well. They are both playing in this game. I think you brought the matchup to watch is going to be Will Anderson versus Deuce Vaughn, because Deuce Vaughn, I mean, he's a great player, but that's not really going to be the whole entire offense. The offense, with Will Howard, ultimately is drastically better. With him, they are able to stretch the ball down the field, and we have seen in the past how you beat these Nick Saban Alabama teams is throw the ball deep, and I think that Will Howard is going to give you that as well. But on the other side, though, Alabama's problem on the offensive side hasn't been Bryce Young and hasn't been Jahmyr Gibbs. It's been the wide receiver room. I mean, Ja'Cory Brooks, he stepped up at times. Jermaine Burton has had a couple of games where he's had a touchdown, but it hasn't been guys that we have seen. We have like Devontae Smith, like a Jalen Waddle. It's not that deep of a wide receiver room that we're so used to seeing with this Alabama team. So they're going to have to throw the ball to beat Kansas State. I know that Jahmyr Gibbs, he really is built like Alvin Kamara type of build of a running back. He can beat you in the running game and the receiving game, but Alabama just can't rely too heavily on him. The receivers are going to have to step up in this one. I think that a lot of people are expecting this one as an Alabama blowout. I'm expecting Kansas State to give every body blow that Alabama brings. So I expect this one to be one of the better of the New Year's Six, but in the end, it's hard to ever bet against Nick Saban. I think that they get their first win in a very long time in the Sugar Bowl. They curse some demons, but this is going to be a game to watch. K-State's going to give you everything that they handle. It's going to be a 4-quarter battle, but Alabama sneaks out late with a field goal.
Well, it's a close one there that nobody will expect. Even a close game, I don't think anybody expects in this one. But moving on to another game here, another intriguing matchup. Definitely the most intriguing out of all of the New Year's Six. I think that is the Goodyear Cotton Bowl, of course, in Arlington, Texas. This here is between your American champion, number 16 ranked Tulane Green Wave, and the runner-up of the Pac-12, the number 10 ranked USC Trojans. This game here, definitely two teams that are on opposite levels of relativity, I guess you would say, to college football. USC has always been viewed as a powerhouse team, always there. Talked in the offseason about Lincoln Riley going over and about their success. They make it to the Pac-12 championship. They get beat by a better Utah team twice this year. That basically beating their losses this year. This game here, but it just screams close game. Two teams that are not used to each other. There is no way that Lincoln Riley has ever played Tulane in his college coaching career.
Actually, he has last year. Tulane
last
lost
year
by 4. Yeah.
Wow. And they lost by 4.
Yep.
Huh. So Tulane beat Oklahoma last year.
No, Oklahoma beat Tulane.
Oklahoma beat Tulane. Okay.
It was like, I believe it was like a 44-40 type of game. It was very high score. And I mean, Tulane was really getting blown out, and they were able to get it going. But yeah, they faced off in week 1 of last season, and man, Tulane gave them all.
Well, Tyler knows something I don't know. Tyler is the knowledge expert. Tyler, I don't know how you remember all these games. I just can't do it.
I do. Well, I was just on a show that we were talking about this game, and
okay.
Well, I didn't like look it up. I just knew that like this is another storyline that Tulane has pretty much. It's the same team that they faced off against Oklahoma, and like you mentioned, USC, Lincoln Riley, and now Caleb Williams. So, I mean, Tulane's got the tape on Caleb Williams in this Lincoln Riley offense. So I just don't think that you're going to see anything different.
Yeah, I just think it's one of those games where it screams close game. As you alluded to in last year's matchup, I think that for me, Tulane has absolutely been the most offensive firepower team outside of TCU all season long. They've done well with what they have. Very good quarterback who knows the offense well, can basically distribute the ball anywhere he wants. They've got good receivers. Tulane came out of nowhere, and we did not have Tulane on our radar at all to begin this season, and all of a sudden here they are playing in a New Year's Six bowl game. Uh, as far as USC goes, you've got Caleb Williams back, but is he healthy? Is he healthy enough in order to take USC to a win here? Because ultimately, really nobody has stepped up. Jordan Addison has not played to what the potential was and what the thought was Jordan Addison would be for this USC team. Really, they haven't had any sense of ball movement except for their game against UCLA. They've had trouble moving the ball and have won some games just because they've got the necessary guys to win a game by a touchdown. Difference here for me, Tulane has scored so many points this season. I don't think they stop now. I think they can score too many points for USC to be able to stop them. Turnovers is the main key in this game. Tulane has forced the most turnovers out of any team in the American Conference. They will force them again in this one against a good USC team. They'll win this game in the Cotton Bowl. I've got the Tulane Green Wave in this one.
So I just looked it up. Last year's game score was 40-35, and Rattler actually was the quarterback. But here's the thing: Michael Pratt, who's going to be the quarterback in this game, he threw for 3 touchdowns and 296 yards. So he's had success against this not Oklahoma defense. Well, pretty much this is like the Oklahoma defense. It's the same defensive coordinator, but at USC. So I think this is going to be one of the more higher scoring games that we're seeing. Like you mentioned, we've seen Tulane's defense at times look lackluster. They can force some turnovers to really flip their field, and they're able to capitalize off of their turnovers. But really the game that I can't get out of my head is that USC-Utah game. The way that USC's defense really just gave up in my eyes. I don't know if they really had that mindset on the field, but just too many missed tackles against Utah. They were able to really run the football really effectively in the fourth quarter, especially where they were able to build out that lead. But I think that with Caleb Williams, there's still the last game that we saw him, he was hobbling off of the field. Like, how much is he close to 100%? Is he going to be 70, 75, somewhere in that range? I think he's still going to be effective enough to score on this Tulane defense. But in the end, I just got to go with the upset. I just feel like I've just been too many vanilla picks. It's time to really spice it up. I want to put some seasoning on this pick. I think that Tulane, the way that this team has really been set up, we've seen USC. They've been a good football team, but what's the mindset of this team going to be? Are they even going to be really prepared? I know that they're going to be prepared for this one, but do they really want to be here? We've seen teams in the past, a lot of opt-outs in this bowl game. There are not really going to be too many opt-outs with USC, especially with Caleb Williams being only a sophomore and having another season. But I just feel like Tulane, this is the way that their season has gone. They went from 2-10, now 11 wins. And to get this 12th win would be so much for this program. So I'm going to go with Tulane. I'm going to go with the upset.
Man, Tyler's put some Zatarans on that and riding the old green wave. Some Tony Sacheries on there, and Tyler's riding the green wave all the way to Arlington for this Tulane team. So am I. I think we are riding in the same boat for this one.
Ride the wave.
I feel it. Ride the wave. Moving on to our next game here is the Rose Bowl, the granddaddy of them all. In Pasadena, California, between the number 11 ranked Penn State Nittany Lions and the Pac-12 champion, number 8 ranked Utah Utes. This game here, well anticipated. The strange part is it is not your Big Ten runner-up playing in this game. It is your third team in the Big Ten playing in this Rose Bowl game because 2 Big Ten teams have made the college football playoff. So ultimately a Big Ten team has to play in this game. And it turns out to be Penn State at number 11. For Utah, they get that big win against USC, as we have talked about time and time again. Fantastic ending to the season for them and a lot of upside going into this game. So I think for me, biggest story here is Utah's going to face probably the best defense that they faced all year long in this one. I think difference can be Penn State's linebacker core. Penn State's secondary can still be a very big factor in this one, even though Joey Porter Jr. isn't playing in this game. I still think they can be a major factor. I think as far as Penn State's offense against Utah's defense stepped up and played a hell of a game against USC. And if Penn State wants to win this game, number one, they got to take care of the football. Sean Clifford has to take care of the football in this game. Of course, this is his last game in a Penn State uniform. I think it is just very, very key for Penn State to hold on to the football, give Nick Singleton the ball, feed him the football in this one. Last time Penn State played in this Rose Bowl, they played against USC. They fed Saquon Barkley the ball, and that man went to town. So I think that's the key in this one. You still got a number of good receivers there available to you. And explore the tight end options there for Penn State as well. They really need to get the ball out there to Brenton Strange and let him run. I mean, he's a big guy. He's huge. Just feed him the ball in this game. For me, difference in this one is defense. If Penn State can control the line of scrimmage in this game, I think they can win it. It'll be a very close game all the way throughout. I think this can be a field goal game at the end of it all. Utah has Cam Rising. Only problem is I don't think they're prepared to play a really good top 5 defensive team in the country with Penn State. I think they play to their full potential in this one. They're ready. It's the Rose Bowl. They know that they're lucky to be in the spot. And I think that they take advantage of the opportunity. I'm going to take the Nittany Lions in this one to win it by a field goal. I think it ultimately comes down to last possession.
Yeah, if you've been a fan of the show, you shouldn't be surprised at that pick. But yeah, this is called the granddaddy of all for the reason. I know that Kansas and Arkansas was the best game of the year, but this might be up there in the bowl picks. I do think that a lot of people are overlooking this Penn State team just because of the quarterback, Sean Clifford. You know, he's just really a game manager in this rate, but I just think that Nick Singleton is going to be your guy. Like you mentioned, last time that we saw Penn State in this Rose Bowl, they fed Saquon Barkley, but you got to be realistic. If you're going to beat Utah, you won't be able to run forever on this defensive line. They're going to be able to change the defensive scheme, especially with Kyle Whittingham, the defensive-minded head coach that he has been. Just look at the defensive schemes that he ran in the first half against USC versus the second half. They shut down that running attack. USC was able to really run the ball effectively, and then they got shut down. So Penn State, if whatever works in the first half, really ultimately it's not going to work in the second half. So they got to be able to air it out. I do think that Penn State's defense will get tested, especially with Cam Rising. Not only how we've seen him throw the ball, he's been able to run the ball as well. And Tavian Thomas, the big bruiser in the backfield. I mean, we don't even have to talk about Utah. We know that both of us have been high on it. They were in our playoff. But in the end, I know that Utah – coming off of a Rose Bowl loss last year, I have them going 0-2. There's just something about this Penn State team that I think that a lot of people are overlooking them, and they're just expecting a Utah blowout. I mean, a lot of people are saying that Utah is just a way better team, and this is not even going to be close. I'm going to go on the side that a lot of people and a lot of America are going against. So I think that Penn State, looking at Bowl Mania, only like 20% of America is on them. So why not go with the underdog in this one? So give me the Nittany Lions in a close defensive game.
Plenty of rest, plenty of preparation for this one here for Penn State. Utah, of course, riding off their big win. So both teams have some advantages going to this one. We'll see how it plays out in the granddaddy of them all. Of course, getting on to the more important national championship games that will take place in order to see who ultimately will be competing for that national championship early in January. Of course, it starts on New Year's Eve, folks. This game here, I think the VRBO Fiesta Bowl in Phoenix, Arizona, of course, home of the Arizona Cardinals. I think this game here, of course, you got number 3 TCU, the Horned Frogs, playing against the number 2 ranked Michigan State or Michigan Wolverines. I almost said Michigan State. Oh my gosh, somebody smacked me. I think this game here, I'm losing my marbles, Tyler. This game here is interesting. It's intriguing. Everybody is picking Michigan because Michigan, I can't tell you how many times I've heard from people, Michigan's the best team in the country this year. They're just playing like the best team in the country this year. I ultimately don't think that Michigan's played like the best team in the country this year. If they played like the best team in the country this year, they wouldn't have barely beat Illinois at the end of the football game. If they were the best team in the country this year, they wouldn't be opening the season against friggin' Hawaii. There's things there, ultimately contributing factors for Michigan to be where they are now. I think if Michigan wants to show that they're a good football team, next season, play a top 10 team in the country to start the season. Do what Georgia did. They played Oregon to open the season, and they ultimately destroyed them, showing that they were the best team in the country. This one here, I think TCU smells blood in the water. They know they're pissed after their, overtime loss to K-State. I think the difference is TCU's more hungry than Michigan. Michigan knows where they're at this season. They know what they've done. I don't think they know what Sonny Dykes and this TCU team's going to even bring to the table. You've got arguably the guy that was right there sitting there warming a chair for the Heisman Trophy that's going to lead this team out, ultimately just give his absolute all. I mean, he gives absolute all for the Big 12 championship. What do you think he's going to do for a national title game? This year is ultimately the preparation and the first chance we get to see these two teams match up and who's going to take the cake and ultimately make it to the national championship. I have the Cinderella story continuing. TCU makes it to the national championship game. I don't think that Michigan can stop them offensively. I don't think they can. Michigan couldn't stop Ohio State's offense late in the game on the road at Columbus, even though they blew them out, only because they scored a ton of offense because Ohio State's defense was terrible. I think TCU's defense can get stops. TCU has the ability to do that. Nobody has any belief in this TCU defense other than TCU. If TCU thinks they can stop them, they're going to do everything in their power to do it. I think they can. I've got the Horned Frogs making it to the Natty.
Yeah, I'm really no doubting TCU's defense. I've seen this defense of what they can do all season. I said it that them and Kansas State are the top two defenses in the Big 12, and Michigan is going to be able to see that here on Saturday afternoon. That's going to be the afternoon game, and then the Ohio State Georgia game will be the night game. But both of these teams do have some similarities. They are slow starting teams. TCU, we have seen them start off slow, and then I don't know how they do it, but they always somehow find a way to win. Just going back to that
pull out 55 points out of nowhere.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, the 28-10 comeback, the Baylor running on to the field goal, and yeah, Michigan have troubles against Maryland. Michigan State, Illinois. Like you mentioned, I don't know who's saying that Michigan's the best team. We'll find that out. But as of now, they're definitely not the best team. I mean, I know that a lot of the teams have struggled. We've seen Georgia struggle with Missouri and Kent State. So I'm not really every team in college football has flaws. There's not really that one team, but there is going to be that one team that wins the national championship. But I think that this is going to be a game here between TCU and Michigan. Honestly, I know that the defenses are good, but I think that the offenses could overpower them. This could be like a 34-31 type of game. Max Duggan versus J.J. McCarthy. Whew, man, that's going to be a quarterback matchup. I think that J.J. McCarthy is going to have to play like he did against Ohio State. He's going to be able to have to trust his arm. He had an okay game against Purdue. Really, Donovan Edwards controlled that game. And I'm not really concerned about Blake Corum being out on this one. Donovan Edwards is just as good as Blake Corum. This Michigan offensive line is going to be able to control against the defensive line. That's going to be really the game of the trenches that's going to decide this Fiesta Bowl. Can TCU's defensive line match up against Michigan's offensive line, which is the best in the country? So I think that TCU, though, has the receiver edge, especially with Quentin Johnson leading the way. TCU also has a really good running back as well. I mean, they have pretty much two running backs. They have him and then Max Duggan. We've seen him what he could do, especially in the Big 12 championship against Kansas State. That really good drive that he had. Man, I love to pick the TCU Cinderella story, but there's also a revenge tour going on. Michigan last year, they made the playoff. If y'all don't remember, Georgia beat really the ever-living crap out of them last year. So I think that they remember that game going from that. They circled it. I think that they get it done in a 34-31 type of game and in TCU Cinderella run.
And we split in the semifinal, the first semifinal. We'll see what happens here for the second semifinal as we get to our next one here. Great football matchup here that we could see for this semifinal as the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl in Atlanta. Of course, Georgia picks this as their spot, being the number one pick. They
Could have
decide,
just put this as at.
yeah, you might as well put it at an at because they went on a little tiny bus tour while Ohio State had to get on
Went
a
to the
plane to make it
aquarium.
to Atlanta. Yeah, yeah. And this game here with the Peach Bowl, it is number 4 ranked Ohio State up against the number 1 ranked Georgia Bulldogs. Um, Arguably, I think that Georgia, for me, is the best team in the country this year because nobody has really come close to them except for Missouri. If Missouri beat this team, they weren't number 1 in the country. We're talking weird, wacky stuff. But Georgia survives. Georgia makes it through the whole season with Stetson Bennett. And they've got good guys offensively that can move the football, can run. They don't really have a dominant running back. They just have a really good balanced team that can score the football. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, I think Georgia's defense is not as good as their team was last year. But I think that their defense is good enough to win football games like this. As far as Ohio State goes, uh, I don't. They're just a mixed bag, and that's the problem. And I don't think Ohio State's ever been a mixed bag like this in recent years. But right now they are. I just feel that Ohio State doesn't. They're just not ready for a game like this against Georgia. Georgia is on a whole nother level than Ohio State. I mean, I think the biggest thing is if Ohio State beats Michigan or keeps it even close with Michigan in that game to close the season out, we're talking completely different story. We're talking maybe this is a close game at the end of it. But this one, I've got Georgia single-handedly running over Ohio State. I think they can easily win by 21 points in this. 3 touchdowns is no stretch of the imagination for Georgia to win this game by, and I think they can. So I'm going to go with the Bulldogs in order to make their way to another national championship.
Yeah, they're on the quest of winning a back-to-back national championship. But I'm going to talk about Ohio State first. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of people. Oh, they lost to Michigan, so this is their revenge tour starting now. I just don't believe that. I mean, we've seen Ohio State's defense. They played a Michigan team that has an offense that's really built like Georgia. I mean, what is Ohio State going to do to defend both Brock Bowers and then Dwayne Washington, their big 6'7" tight end, and then you have Kenny McIntosh. So there's just a lot of athletes on this Georgia offense. I don't think that Jim Knowles is going to have a game plan for it. Stetson Bennett, he's going to turn to Quavius Bennett probably at this game. I mean, whenever he plays in Atlanta, whenever Georgia plays in Atlanta, they just go on a rampage. In the first game, they put up 40 points on Oregon. And the last game that we saw, they put up 50 points against LSU. So easy pick for Georgia. I see this one in a blowout. Just too much offense, and their defense against CJ Stroud. Yeah, this is going to be a long day for the Buckeyes in the ATL.
A long day indeed. I think the true colors will come out of this Ohio State team, losing their last 2 games of the season. It's going to be tough for them to recover from a season ending like this. Ultimately, that win, if they do win against Michigan, we're talking different story, like I said. But those are your 4 teams. You do have TCU and Michigan facing off in the early game, and your nightcap game is Ohio State and Georgia. Moving to our other parts of the show, closing towards the end of the show, it does include a sponsor first, though. After the recap, this sponsor is sponsored by Fanatics. If you guys want to head over to Fanatics and get all of your team gear ready for the national championship, ready for the New Year's Six bowl games, based on what happens in the Rose Bowl game, I will either be getting gear or not getting gear. We will see what happens. I anticipate this to be a giant, massive blow up of gear being bought right here at this time, right after Christmas. I know a lot of people did buy stuff during Christmas. So thank you for those people that did go out and buy stuff with our link for that Christmas time. And I'm sure we'll see a few more roll in for the good deals going on over at Fanatics for these late bowl games, and of course for the semifinal and the national championship after the new year rolls around. If you guys want to go get some of that team gear for yourself, head over to that link in our show notes below. It will be included there. You guys can just click on the link, select your team, go find you some good gear, and use that right there. And you guys help us out along with helping yourself out with a really good deal for you or somebody else as a gift. So, guys, check that out over there at Fanatics. Moving on to our news, Tyler. I will let you take the news tonight. You've got a couple of segments in there, of course. One of them includes a gentleman that was occupied at your university. So I will let you lead it off with some of the news here.
Yeah, we got two news stories that really has a lot of pizzazz with them. You could say it either the wrong or the right way. But the first one is Kayshon Boutte changes his mind and declares for the 2023 NFL Draft. Now, if you're an LSU fan, you've been keeping up with Boutte. He had this long letter and said like, "Oh, I'm coming back for my senior season and, planning on winning a national championship." Well, they were like, "Okay, well, great. He's coming back for another season. The offense is going to be loaded at the wide receiver position, especially with what you got already in place and what's coming in the recruiting class." But then we go into yesterday and we get a report saying that he is unavailable for the Citrus Bowl. And we were like, "Okay, is he, is his grades?" Because Brian Kelly said that he's like enrolled in the spring semester. And then a couple hours later on his Twitter, he says, "Oh, I changed my mind. I'm going to declare for the 2023 NFL Draft." This man, I just cannot figure out. He just does. I don't know, like, what's going on. I'm not going to really like ask any questions. It's probably just something personal. He did this past year become a father, so congratulations to him. But the draft stock that I've been hearing from people that he is a day two guy. He's either going to be a middle to like a second rounder or a third rounder. And honestly, if it's that, in my opinion, this is a wrong decision. I feel like this season for him, like there was a lot of expectations for him going into this season. He was on the All-American list. I know he was coming off an injury. He got injured. I can't even remember the week. It was against the Kentucky game. He injured his ankle in that one. So there's high expectations for him. And then really, we've seen him throughout the season. He had games where he's had a touchdown. He had his first touchdown of the game wasn't until the Tennessee game. And it's just like he's just been inconsistent this season. To me, I just don't understand really this decision. But honestly, I'm just going to say good luck to you. And hopefully you make your money and, become the next NFL guy. But for the future, especially of next season, I think that at the wide receiver position, LSU is still okay. You do lose Jeray Jenkins. He has declared for the NFL draft as well. You're losing Boutte. We've seen Jack Besh, the former tight end wide receiver combo, transfer to TCU. So TCU just adding another on. But you still have Malik Neighbors. Neighbors was your leading receiver. You have Brian Thomas Jr., Kyron Lacey. And then you're bringing in a five-star Sheldon Sampson. You're also getting an Alabama wide receiver transfer of Aaron Anderson. So it would have been nice to have a veteran presence, but still the wide receiver room is still going to be loaded for this Tiger team. But we do have a comment. I saw this one. So no, other than that, I saw that one coming. Yep. If you're an LSU fan, you just don't know what to expect from Boutte. I mean, he's just it's like UCF. You just can't figure him out. But yeah, I just had to bring that up.
Yeah, I do think it was a big surprise. I just rolled out of bed one day and decided, never mind, I'm going to retract my statement in my long letter that I either did or somebody
It's a
else
very
did
well
for
thought out
me.
letter too. It's
Sure.
like 4 different paragraphs, and he just comes out of nowhere and does a sentence.
I
I'm
don't know.
declaring.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Something happened internally there in his mind, maybe family. Who knows what
I just
happens
hope it
there?
wasn't like an anger reaction and that he doesn't, regret his decision of not coming back and trying to improve his draft stock. But we'll see. We'll see in the
Yeah,
coming
we'll see.
months. And
We'll see. Yeah,
shoot, he can be like, "Oh, I'm coming back," and then it'll be like, "Oh, wait, I don't know. I want to declare."
sure. There's a lot of time between now and the NFL draft for that to change. I mean, once you declare, it doesn't mean anything until
Yeah.
you're there at the combine, and things happen. We've seen that happen, and we've seen guys flip flop all over the place. So that might be the case here with that. Who knows?
Yeah, the next one we have is none other than Sonny Dykes. He was asked, they're doing their weekly press conference leading up to the Michigan game, but he took this time to jab the SEC schools over their non-conference schedule. And I'm looking up this tweet here by Sports Illustrated. They brought up on their article. So here is literally word for word of what he said, and I'll give you your thoughts as well to this. So in the Big 12. We don't have the good fortune to play an out of conference like the SEC does in week 10. You are not going to catch the Citadel in week 10. We caught Texas. That's just kind of the way our league is designed. You have got to be on your best, and it takes a toll on your team. It is difficult to get through that gauntlet of 9 consecutive conference games, and we were beat up. Do you agree with Dykes?
I do. I do agree with Dykes. I think that if uh, these conferences want to be considered the best out there, I think that they need to be playing their best football and the best teams in the conference late in the season. I think week 10 is too late to be playing non conference games. And if it's a non conference game late in the season, it better be somebody who's ranked if you're a ranked team in the country, or you're competing at the rank level. I mean, it better be somebody who's competitive. He is right in saying that you don't need to be playing the Citadel in week 10 of the season. I completely agree 110% with him in this statement. I don't think it's only
I
the
wonder what
SEC.
schools he's hinting at.
Yeah.
Alabama.
Yeah. I mean, there are teams out there that just don't need to be playing teams that aren't relevant or aren't even able to play at the same level of football that they are. I mean, it's like apples to oranges type thing, and it doesn't. It makes zero sense for these teams to be playing, this late in the season. I mean, you either put the game early in the season or don't play it at all. I've always said that if these teams want to increase their strength of schedule, you need to be playing teams that are relevant. I get that there is like one game. Look, I get it. If there's one game that you play throughout the year and it's got to be, Utah State for a one game, I get it. But there is no reason that you need to be calling Utah State, Citadel, Morgan State, or North Dakota State, calling them and saying, "Hey, come on down to Tuscaloosa or Baton Rouge or Auburn or Florida or wherever it may be, and say, come on down and play us down here. We'll give you a crap ton of money to take it back with you, and y'all can fly 5 private jets back to town." That's not what it's about. That's my problem with it, and I think that's what Sonny Dykes is trying to say, and I completely agree with him 110%.
Yeah, I agree with him in the first statement, but running the gauntlet of the Big 12, like, come on. If you're going to compare the SEC gauntlet versus the Big 12 gauntlet, that's just not even close.
Well,
But
I don't
some of
know
these
if he's
teams would love to play Kansas, Iowa State and all these teams and all that. And then Big 12 schools would say, like, oh, we would like to play Vanderbilt and Missouri every week. So I think that there's really no right and wrong, but I do agree with him that there's really no point of playing like the Citadel. And, I know that LSU played UAB. UAB is one of the better Group of Five teams, and we've
respectable
seen
team, right?
these SEC teams, lose to some of these type of teams. So it's not really a given. But to face an FCS team that late in the season, it's just preposterous and should never happen.
Absolutely. Of course, getting to our last thing here before we get to it, we do have another sponsor of the show, and it is YETI. If you guys want to go check out all the gear over at YETI, you guys can use that link below. If you do spend $200 or more on their site, of course, that is site wide, you will receive a free Rambler 14-ounce mug. If you guys want to go over there and check that out, head over to the link below in the show. It'd be right underneath that Fanatics link, so you guys can head over there as well and get all that stuff. I was actually today shopping around. Me and Dad were shopping around today, looking at some stuff, and they had some YETI stuff around, and it's just weird. YETI stuff is just so much more durable. It just feels more high quality than other things. And I'm standing there, and I'm just like, man, I was like, they are an investment purchase. I mean, for those people that don't understand, what YETI is, if you go and buy a cooler, it is an investment. You might need to take out another mortgage. It is one of those things where it is a lot, but they do hold up for a very long time. They hold up forever. I'm a big fan of all of their drinkware, all their mugs and cups and things, because they just go through everything. I mean, they can last through just about anything. Um, as long as you're not blowing them up. I mean, and they might last through that. Who knows? But of course, they're very durable and they are an investment. So it's not hard to spend $200 over at YETI is all I'm trying to say. So if you guys do spend $200 over there on that site, you will receive a free Rambler 14-ounce mug in there. Head to that link down below in the show. Last and closing, Tyler, is our question for the show. It is kind of a piggyback off of our last show. We did talk about who was the most surprising team this season. Last show. This show, we're going to be talking about who's the most disappointing team this season in college football. Tyler, I'll let you take it away first.
Oh boy, were there a lot of them. The two teams that I narrowed it down to was Oklahoma State and Miami. And I think that you could probably guess who I'm going with is the team that I had actually competing for the ACC championship game. This is why I'm not Mr. ACC and Jacob is, but Miami Hurricanes. I know that it's a first-year head coach, Mari Cristobal, but you had way too much talent, especially at the quarterback position, the position that wins and loses most of the games. Tyler Van Dyke, 5-7. The last time that we saw this team, they lost 42-16 to Pittsburgh. Like, come on. What are we doing here? We haven't seen this Miami team. It hasn't been the same since the early 2000s. They've been trying to build it up. They've been through 4 coaches throughout the past 10 years. It just hasn't worked. But we'll see if Mari Cristobal, was able to get a nice recruiting class. But the state of Florida is pretty much up for grabs. I think that Florida State, if I had to give a rank in the state of Florida, it's Florida State 1. It's probably UCF is 2. Florida's 3. Miami is 4. Who would have thought that in the early 2000s? So
where does South Florida fall in there?
Oh, they're 5. They're honestly below Florida A&M at this rate, the way that they've been playing. But Miami is the disappointing team of this season.
Yeah, I can agree with that statement there. I'm gonna go a little off the wall here. Get ready for this one. Yeah, sit up in your chair type thing. I don't think you would think that I would say this, but given their track record, given what they've done in the past, what their dynasty has, come up to be, I think you know who I'm hinting at.
Oh,
and
no.
I think it's gonna be the Alabama Crimson Tide.
Ooh.
They are my team that is probably the most disappointing this year. There's a reason why. And I think the first reason being this felt like the year that Alabama was beatable. Everybody talks about, it's all about beating Alabama. And LSU fans do talk about that. The season success really does end there with beating Alabama. And, if they make it to the national championship, of course, that is everything that they want it to be. I do think that, yes, the 32-31. Yes.
I knew that was coming.
Yeah, that was another one that was coming. I just think that Alabama just didn't figure it out this year, and I picked them to lose in the Sugar Bowl against K-State. I just think there are teams there that ultimately this is their time to do it. Talk about in the NFL. The Patriots were the team forever. Alabama was the team forever in college football. Now there's other teams that have come up and they're ultimately there on the doorstep, and it's a close one. I didn't think that LSU had the better team this year than Alabama. They just played better football than Alabama. And if at that point, if Alabama's getting beat by a better football team, even though they have good enough talent to win that football game, that means there's a problem. Thing about it is I think I'm going to go towards coaching. Nick Saban is probably going to be labeled as the best college football coach of all time at the end of the day. No, I don't think there's any question about that. I think that probably is a true statement. I think all SEC fans and fans around the country can probably agree with that statement.
I agree.
At the end of the day, once you swallow it and you figure it out, that I think that's what it's going to be. My problem is I don't think Nick Saban's going to be around Tuscaloosa much longer. I think that his time is coming. I know he signed the contract and everything, but I don't think Alabama has any problem with giving Nick Saban any kind of money he wants in order for him if he wants to leave. I can see Nick Saban leaving Alabama before we see the 12-team playoff. I don't think Nick Saban wants to deal with that. He knows how hard it would be for his team to make it to the national championship. If that was the case, Nick Saban already has gray hair. I don't think he wants more from that. And I just think that gives somebody else on that coaching staff a chance to step in and really be their guy. And I just think it's time for the new modern young head coach to step in. We're seeing successful young coaches. When I say young, guys in their 40s and late 30s and 40s and 50s coming in and coaching football teams at the college level and watching them succeed. We're seeing former players of the National Football League and, former great college players, go back and mentor and coach these teams and take the reins. We've seen it happen here late in the season. Drew Brees is going back to Purdue to be an assistant coach for who knows how long. We really don't know. Deion Sanders is going to be coaching Colorado for an extended period of time, as we've seen them offer him a lot of money to come over there and straighten that team out. And Nick Saban just seems like a forgotten age of football coaches now. At this point, it is a history thing. And I think that dynasty, with Alabama has come to an end. Last and for all, I don't think that they might win a national championship in the next 5 years. Who knows? But I just don't think that they'll ever be as dominant as they were when they had A.J. McCarron and Tua and Jalen Hurts. I think that's over. And I do think I think Nick Saban's career is ultimately going to end very soon at Alabama. That's why they're my disappointment. Losing on the road to Tennessee. There were there were people on the panel of College Game Day saying, "Hey, Tennessee's going to win this football game." 5 years ago, we're talking about Alabama blowing that team out. I mean, there's major changes in the SEC and there's major changes around college football. When you look at it in the grand scheme of things, and they are my biggest disappointment of the year. I know I closed the show out with a bombshell there.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that. I mean, I definitely agree. I think that Alabama fans would agree that it's a disappointing year. Like all the talk of the really the offseason was that this was going to be the most loaded Alabama team since they won the national championship in 2020. They were loaded in that season, and they were loaded going in this one, especially with Bryce Young. This was his third year. He has a better experience. You're bringing in, you do lose your top rusher last year, but you bring in a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs. But like I just mentioned, like Will Anderson, where has he been all season? And like I mentioned, the wide receiver room, it just hasn't been the talent that we're accustomed to. And they're saying like, oh, 10 wins is a disappointing season. Shoot, if you're like any other program, you're taking 10 wins every season. But since Alabama, their expectation is to make it to the college football playoff every year and win the national championship. So in their eyes, it is a disappointing season. So honestly, saying Alabama is the most disappointing team in the season is really not even that far of a stretch. I mean, we've seen like the teams of Miami, like my pick, Texas A&M didn't have the season that they were hoping for, especially with the preseason hype. We've seen Oklahoma State with the preseason hype, Baylor, Michigan State. But yeah, I mean, Alabama, their fan base, this is like disappointing. Like any other fan base, they would take it any day of the week.
Yes, and we will see what happens with Alabama here in the Sugar Bowl against K-State. Of course, guys, closing out our show, we do have it was 2 shows this week, Tyler. It's a lot, man. I don't know about the whole 2-show thing. I think this
We'll
is
keep
just
it at
the
one.
little nice special. I like keeping it at 1. It keeps me balanced throughout the week, and of course, I like talking.
We had to
college
end the new
football for
year
about an
off
hour
of
and a
a
half.
bang, so we gotta
Sure.
deliver.
Absolutely. And of course, if you guys want to catch any more of our content, you can catch us on Mondays. That is Monday afternoon. Normally, you can catch us on there around 3 o'clock. Of course, you can find us on podcasts wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and many more. If you guys want to check any of our content, Tyler and I are half of the Sunday night show from the Sports Scramble podcast. If you guys want to check out that show, that is on Sunday nights with Chet Wade, me, and Tyler. And of course, if you guys want to check out SEC Talk, that is on Tuesday nights. That is with Tyler and Wade. That is also on Facebook over there. You guys can check that out over there. And show us some love on some other shows. Tell us you came from another show and let us know what show that you came from. And we'll be sure to shout you out in our show for sure. Of course, that is our last show of 2022, Tyler. We are moving to 2023 with new beginnings. Of course, we have goals, aspirations for the show in the new year, and hopefully we can take that into a new step and direction and grow the show. Of course, we are partnered with Belly Up Sports, so if you guys want to go check out any other shows over there on Belly Up, show them some love over there. Let them know you came over from College Football Coast to Coast. I'm sure those guys will shout you out. A lot of good guys over there. Great content over there. You guys can check all of that out. We will see you guys in the new year for 2023. A new year. Hopefully, it's a great year. So we're looking forward to it in a good closing till the college football season right after the new year. We will see you guys next week in 2023. Peace out.